How many of you who are listening right now avoid disagreements, feel uncomfortable arguing, or feel defenseless when engaged in conflict because you don't know what to say? Well, let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because it doesn't have to be this way. And you don't have to feel powerless. You just have to have the tools, skills, and inspiration perfected by a master problem solver that would show you how to handle yourself in situations like this. Well, stick around because by the end of this podcast, you will.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Hesha Abrams, is an internationally acclaimed master attorney, mediator, negotiator, and deal maker who for 30 plus years has been renowned for her success in resolving high-profile or difficult matters, including mediating the case over the secret recipe for Pepsi. She has worked with Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, IBM, Verizon, and other large multinational companies, as well as individuals, investors, and small businesses, creating deals and solving disputes. She's distilled her experience into her popular new book, Holding the Calm: The Secret to Resolving Conflict and Diffusing Tension, a toolkit to guide anyone to diffuse tension, eliminate conflict, and make deals in their own lives. I'm glad to have you with us, and welcome to the show, Hesha.
Excellent. Pleasure to be here, sir.
All right, let's roll. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I want to dive right in. But I think what I want to start with is one of the elephants in the room. And although some people welcome it, what makes so many others afraid of dealing with conflict right out of the gate?
Oh, because it makes us nauseous. I like to joke that conflict is either a root canal or a colonoscopy without anesthesia. It depends on which end you're doing, right?
Great visualization.
Isn't it good? Who goes to go, yay, conflict, opportunity to grow and learn. Oh, for God's sakes. We run away from it like it's the plague. What can we do? And the reason we do that is because we don't have good tools. These are professional things that I use. Every case I walk into, somebody says, give me $100 million. And the other side says, here's 10,000, drop dead.
Right.
How do you settle that?
Right.
And it's not with logic, reason, and rationale. And that's what we tend to use is, let me just explain it to you. Let me just educate you. Let me school you a little bit. And then you will realize I'm right. Fat chance of that sucker working. And I bet everyone's laughing because that's what we do.
Right.
And there's some easy tricks to do to where, because I give lots of speeches and people are always saying, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. Who had time to write a book? And then I was getting so many people asking me for advice on normal things. I thought, people don't know what to do. It's almost like we're cave people shoving food in our mouths. And I want to say, here's a fork, here's a knife, here's a spoon, here's chopsticks. And these are things you don't have to get a master's degree in or some master's course. This junk you can do right now to make it better. And the more you do it, obviously, like anything else, the better you'll get. So
Right.
That's why I wrote this little $15 easy paperback for people to get and make their lives easier.
All right. Well, while we're talking about your easy $15 paperback, I'm assuming we can get a Kindle version of that or an ebook version of that. How about an audiobook? Did you do one of those yet?
I did.
Good going. Did
I
you
did.
do that? Did you do it, or did you have somebody else do it for you?
No, I hired somebody with a better voice.
Oh, I like your voice. It's an authentic voice. Next
Thank
book,
you.
I'm going to talk you into doing your own. But good. So
Thank you.
so for those of you who want to hear it, you can hear it. You want to read it on your iPad or whatever, you can do that as well. But let's stay there because you're right. Some things seem very simple. I know I call them the big three, and I have to duck when I use them. But when I start hitting some conflict with my wife, I tend to follow these three words. You'll hate the third one. Take it easy.
Oh.
Calm down.
Oh.
Relax. Okay.
Oh.
And when I'm really wanting to get
My
punched in the
heart.
nose, I'll say simmer down. But that's just me
heart.
being really crazy. But those three, I got a feeling those are like lightning rods.
Eliminate, everybody listening, eliminate all of that from your vocabulary. Never, ever, ever say it. First of all, it doesn't work. Never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down. But can I give a little quick neuroscience lesson? It
Sure.
takes 2 minutes and makes it easy for people. Because what I want to do in this podcast is not just give theory. I want to give real specific techniques. What do you do and when? But you can't do the same thing all the time. Diagnosis is a really important part of this thing. So if there's a bomb in the town square, that guy waddles out in his Michelin suit. He doesn't just start cutting wires. He looks, he diagnoses. What am I doing here before they start cutting and doing stuff? It's the same thing with anybody else. I may treat you differently than I would treat your wife or your kid or your pastor or your neighbor, because it's you and you are uniquely you, right? So here's the neuroscience piece. We all have, every human being has an amygdala. It's two small kidney-shaped organs deep in the back of the brain, right above the brainstem. It's sometimes called the reptilian brain, the ancient brain. It's the flight, fight. I see a stick. I said a snake. As I run. What do I do? And it's designed to shut down the prefrontal cortex because you don't have time to think. You have to react, and you got to go. So that's what it does. What is the thing that triggers the amygdala the most out of everything in the whole world? Feeling powerless. When you feel powerless, man, that thing lights up. And we know this because we shove people in MRIs and tested. And so we know all these things, right? So it lights up immediately. And when you say to someone, when they're upset, by definition, the amygdala is triggered. And when you say, simmer down, calm down, take a breath, what's wrong with you? What you're saying is, you have no power. I have power. Now you feel more powerless. It actually is worse. It's like putting, oil on a fire. It's worse. So the number one first thing to do when someone is upset is to see that they're upset. You just name it. That's it. That's literally all you have to do is name it. You seem upset. And they might go, excuse my French, no shit, Sherlock. Or they may go, thank you for seeing it. Or they may go, finally, you see it. I don't care what they say. It doesn't make any difference. You say it. And then you say, help me understand why. You know what that does to the amygdala? Do, 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 do. Down we go. Now I can, and now I can talk to you because you're actually listening to me. And I guarantee you, that person who's upset has something to say that you don't know. Now you think you know, but you don't. As if you did, you would have been able to avoid the upsetness. So you will gain information. Now, who's got the power? Person with the information. So it's a form of neuroscience. Nice kitty, nice kitty. You don't scream at the cat to calm down. And I've got lots of ways and techniques to do that I go over in the book. I want to go over some of them with you because I should treat you differently than I would treat your wife or treat, like I said, your kid or somebody else, which means I have to see you. And do you mind if I just go into the next thing quickly?
Well, hang tight. I want to respond to a couple of things you got there, but hold it on deck. First of all, there isn't one thing that, remember, I think like a salesman. You're thinking like a negotiator, and we're meeting in the middle beautifully. First of all, one of the biggest mistakes that people make, and it's instinct versus logic, is we always want to be asking questions. We always want to be listening. I sat when I was at Xerox with a guy named Bob Mitchell, 25 years lead negotiator for the Teamsters. And we watched different negotiations, simulations. And I loved, very quietly, one time he whispered in my ear and he said, just remember, the one who's talking is typically the one who's losing. Now, we're not talking, you and I, we're not talking about beating an opponent right now, but how about we say the one who's talking is the one who's not controlling the conversation? And isn't that ironic? Because we think if we barge in there, I'll give you 15 reasons why I'm right. I'm really doing the job today. No, you're actually losing the conversation.
Well done.
Instinct versus logic. And the only other thing I wanted to unpack a little, which I love, is just the way, and I want you to, we'll talk more about this, to personalize it a little bit, meaning read the personality. I used to fight those Myers-Briggs models, wasn't big on DISC. And I didn't like them because I always took these tests and I thought, well, good, as long as I sell me for the rest of my life, I'm really going to be in great shape here. But the key is, and where the door opens is, try and read that other personality. And if you're dealing with a dominant or a social or an analytical, or pick your quadrant, then adjust. So it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with, as you said, with reading others. So I just wanted to respond of that's sort of what I'm pulling from this. Seems I came out of the gate and said, here's exactly what not to say. Okay. I
Well,
want
I
you to know
love
I
it.
can be trained.
Well, that makes you a good man and good husband material, my friend. And every woman listening is going, woo, 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 woo.
Well, it wasn't, one of the best ways to be trained in many of these things, and this just come from a different angle. Uh, have it done to you. In other words, I can say relax all I want, and it feels good when I say relax, relax. It's instinctive. But
Yeah.
when someone says it to me,
Yeah.
as you said, I'm instantly offended. You just threw oil on this fire. So
Yeah.
a lot of times when we struggle with things, I say, you're struggling with that. If your child, if your let's say adult child asked you the question, would you struggle with that answer? You know,
Terrific.
um, how about take it away from us and look at somebody else? And actually, that really is for me, how it helped. The moment it came back at me, I went, "Oh, you don't have to tell me twice, and you don't have to
Yeah.
explain why. I know
Sorry about
exactly how that just felt."
that. I love it. I love it. So there's so many things I want to say. So
Go.
remind me to talk about a do-over. It's one of the greatest
Okay.
techniques you can ever have. So
Okay.
let me address something that you said first.
Okay.
This, Myers-Briggs, all that kind of junk. It was the thing du jour that everybody did. And the problem with Myers-Briggs, it's too complicated to actually use it. What am I supposed to do? Give you a test and tell you to do it and look at your NQGR? It's ridiculous. So I want to give everybody, and even DISC, I like it personally, but it's more of a professional tool. And I do use it, but it's more of a professional tool. So I want to give people something that, as lay people, something that's so easy that intuitively everyone's going to say, oh, I got that. So if I'm dealing with you, my first question is going to be, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Does everybody agree listening that you would treat an introvert differently than you would treat an extrovert? There's no argument about that. Everyone goes, get it.
Yep.
Okay, that's all you got to do, that one. Second one, are you a thinker or a feeler? Wouldn't I treat a thinker differently than I would treat a feeler? Let's analyze it. Let's go over the data. What do you feel in your gut? What seems right to you? That's not hard stuff. And I will know that after talking to you for 3 minutes, whether you're a thinker or a feeler. Last one, and I give 3. The last one is you're a big picture person or you're a detail person, because they can overlap in any one of these things. If you're a big picture person, we're going to talk about the big things and how we're going to handle it. If you're a detail person, you're going to go, what is wrong with you? We can't even discuss that till we've discussed this. So then you're fighting over the shape of the table or some nonsense. But if I look at you and I listen, that's the whole thing with venting and listening and communicating, blah, 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 blah. That's kind of communication 101 stuff. I'm assuming anybody smart enough to listen to your podcast already knows that kind of stuff. So now, why don't we do that? Because it's too just generic. It's like saying, you get sick, rest. Well, I'd like certain antibiotics and nasal decongestants personally. So while you're venting, and I'm either listening or pretending to listen, which is usually what people do, now I've got something else to do, because you're chattering on about something that I've heard, that I think I've heard, that I'm bored, that I don't like. So I'm not really listening. But if I have to diagnose you, oh, now I'm all ears, because I have to look at you. Are you an introvert or extrovert? Are you a thinker or feeler? Are you a big picture or detail? That's it. That's it. Everyone write that down. 3 things: thinker or feeler, big picture or detail, introvert or extrovert. That's it. Everybody can do that, and everybody can learn to do that faster and better. And guess what? You get off this podcast, go practice, and go into your family. What's your kid? What's your partner? What's your neighbor? Think about someone you don't like and that you with, you smash up against. What are they? How have you been handling them? Oh, that's how those light bulbs go off that go, I've been using the wrong bait on my hook,
Right.
right? I want to catch
Right.
salmon, I don't put a hot dog on the hook, right? I'm trying to catch a vegetarian, I don't put a piece of meat there.
Right.
What am I doing? And what I say to everybody, besides being more skillful, guess what you get? Power. You feel more powerful. You feel more skillful. I'm not scared of conflict because I've got mad skills. I know whatever happens, I can handle it. Now, does it mean I love it? What idiot loves it? unless you're a sociopath, seriously. But if I have to have it, I know how to handle it and I know how to diffuse it.
Right.
That's what I want people to get out of this.
Beautiful. I really well said. You know, it's funny when I train speakers, and I'm going at a slightly different angle, but just stay with me. One of the first things I do is I say, okay, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Usually it's what we call a sniper, just somebody who's having a bad day coming at you. If I was guaranteed no one's going to give me a hard time in there, immediately we calm down. So let's go at it right now. And what we do is we immediately begin to kind of work out a series of moves. Once we get those moves in place and we take that fear off the table, okay, now what's holding us back? What, you're going to trip over a cord? We'll do that every day, you know. So I love the fact of kind of, let's go for the boogeyman in the closet, in a sense. I do think that I love this quote: worry is the misuse of your imagination. I think we misuse our imagination a bit, but want to imagine, and if that's holding you back, okay, let's imagine together, let's work that out. And I can feel and hear from you the power that would give me, and because I know it as a speaker, getting at some of those boogeymen, you know, in the closet.
Right. You know, I said, I joke, but I think I'm pretty serious. I've made probably 10,000 speeches in my life, and that doesn't count mediating, which are little baby mini speeches. So I've had to deal with that. And you know what I found I love? Because it can happen in a speech. It can happen in a meeting. Somebody taking your ideas, somebody shooting you down before they even listen to you. You got to get the power back because your amygdala is going to go, I'm paying attention. You know, the first thing you do, you turn to that person and go, you're my holy skeptic. How great. Let's actually listen to what you have to say because you're going to make sure we get it done right. So what is it you like about it? And then we'll talk about the barriers and the problems. That person literally goes, blah, 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 blah. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. You just took power in a masterful way. And there are 1,000 variations of that you use, but you can't be afraid of the boogeyman or the boogeyman has power over you. But once you have these skills, okay, you know, I can use chopsticks. I can use a fork and spoon. I know what I'm doing. It's extremely empowering, and it's like having magic beans in your pocket.
You know why that works for you? And just so you know, I don't 100% agree with that tactic. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. I'm going to tell you why it works for you, because you have confidence in that tactic. And so I can hear it and feel it. Me, I mean, if you want to hear a different variation,
I do.
First of all, rule number one for me is first one's always free. I don't go after anybody right out of the gate because sometimes it just comes out wrong. And they don't really mean it that way. And we're escalating a situation that doesn't exist. But I think we both agree with that one. So let's push that one aside. I happen to I don't like giving the stage to people who are negative. I have a series of moves, but my second move frequently is to reframe what was just said into a more, into something more acceptable and relay it to the room. Interesting. What I'm hearing is bang. Let me hear from how the rest of you feel, and let the room, because usually most people are annoyed, rolling their eyes. It's Charlie again. We always, and most people, I don't need to, certainly don't want to confront. We're both in agreement with that. And that's why we have it's a style issue right now, not an issue. It's a style thing. I see your move. I'm actually considering it, one I haven't used. What I love about it most is in your delivery, with the confidence that you deliver it, I can see it working. But I would put a warning on that in an asterisk. You better be confident if you go for door number one there, because if you are on shaky ground, you're putting a pedestal out and letting somebody climb up on it and preach a little bit, and you just better be ready for it.
And how you
know what I mean?
it. I love it. But see, look at what just happened. In a minute and a half, we were able to take a concept, refine it, spin it around, turn it into 2 or 3 different options. And we did that in a minute and a half.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah. Well, and you know what it is? I am continuing to evolve. One of the things I love about a podcast, whether I'm a guest or a host, is, keep my ears open, listen, and say, gee, that's something I haven't done before. That doesn't make it wrong. That makes it worth studying.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought I would have to be very confident to go for that one. But if I had confidence and a little bit of ring work is what I call it, meaning I like to do it once or twice to say, well, that really does work. I'm
Mhm.
good to go. But yeah, you're right. It's exchanging ideas. But let's stay there and jump back to your book, Holding
Well,
the
and I
Calm.
like the tools, like even
Yeah,
what you just said. Not everybody wants a magic bullet that works in every
right,
situation.
right.
That's just silly. Diffuse yourself of that notion immediately. You need a tool belt. And sometimes you use this, sometimes you use that. And so being able to diagnose, it's back to the bomb detector analogy,
Yeah,
being able to diagnose so you use the right technique at the right time. And let's say you get it wrong, choose the next technique.
yeah.
That's it. It's not hard. If I do something and it doesn't work, pivot and try something else. It is becomes we get paralyzed by fear, which actually a friend of mine told me this the other day, that you know what fear is? FEAR, frick everything and run.
Right.
Which, sometimes is the appropriate response, but not all.
Well, good point. My son is a stand-up comic, and
Oh,
I've been
cool.
in there. Comics deal with hecklers a different way.
Yeah.
But you and me, we're not stand-up comics. And if we dealt with somebody the way of what we've just described, the way a comedian would, in other words, now I'm going to put you in your place. Um,
Yeah.
we run the risk of losing our audience because the audience already knows that
Yeah.
person's a knucklehead. But we
Yeah.
didn't know you were too.
Yeah.
So we have to hold the calm and rise above it. But let me push it a little bit. Let's go to the political landscape, okay,
Mhm.
that we find ourselves in.
I love doing this because I don't shy away from the hard stuff. I like it.
Good, good. I have to tell you, and we don't get into my stuff, but when I came out with one of my books, I was immediately pushed into, okay, Mr. Change, go at the political landscape and, gulp. Okay, let's go. All right, so let's go. How would you suggest dealing with somebody, and I'm not being red or blue here, I'm just saying dealing with somebody who's kind of argumentative, opinionated, and on the complete opposite side that you're on,
I
because
love it.
I don't see a whole lot of gray out there. It seems like everybody's on one side or the other.
They
It's
are.
Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Maybe not Thanksgiving, but you get it.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah. I love that you did that. And so I'm going to use, even just because this podcast is going to come out before the election, right? So if I do
Oh,
Trump
yeah.
and Biden,
Yep.
everybody knows what we're talking about. So I don't like to get scared about that. And then let me also make it a broader thing too. What tends to happen is that if you disagree with me, I'm going to try to educate you. And then when you don't get it, you're stupid, you're crazy, you're a narcissist, you're ridiculous, you're just fill in a blank with some kind of a label. It's a human thing. Everyone does it. You give yourself some grace. This is what it is we do. Unless someone is actually certifiably mentally ill, they're schizophrenic, they're bipolar, and they're having an episode. I mean, I'm talking real mental illness. They're not crazy. And you should take that thing out of your vocabulary, everybody. And you shouldn't say they're a narcissist, because unless they're a real, live, certified narcissist, everyone's selfish. Everyone has self-interest. Everyone gets pushed in a corner and fights back. So it's easy to say, oh, come from curiosity, when I think that your way is going to destroy the country, like that. But if I sit there and listen to you, and why do you think that? Well, what scares you the most about Biden? What scares you the most about Trump? Okay. And why do you think that? Is there anything redeeming about that? Why do you think the country is weirdly evenly divided? So that means half our country does not think X is a crazy person or is destructive for our country. Is half our country delusional? Maybe they put something in the water. I mean, what is this? So it's an interesting perspective. So do you think that everybody who's in the Trump camp thinks exactly the same? Of course not. Everyone in the Biden camp? Of course not. So people are issue oriented. They could be a fiscal conservative, but abortion's really important to them. They're going Dems. They can be somebody to where the economy or international security is more important, and they like the way Trump does it, and they don't care about all the social issues. It's where do people prioritize what they're prioritizing? So as you ask these questions, you're going to learn. And what will happen is somebody will say, my grandmother had an illegal abortion and died on the table. So that's the number one issue for me. Oh, don't you think differently about that person now? Don't you have a different perspective about it? How about the same thing back on the other side? That's a more advanced technique called paradigm shifting that I do talk about some in the book. But I guarantee you, everybody who has an opinion has a reason for that opinion. And let's say it's the most shallow of all. I just want to be part of team this. Why? Because it makes me feel good about myself. Okay, that's the most shallow of all reasons. And yet people will go to protests over that. They will vote because of that. They will condemn and they will forward nasty, horrible social media posts just because I want to be part of that club. Maybe because that club rejected me, or I think that club is fill in the blank. But once you start discussing it with people, they're really not usually part of the club. And the last piece I give people is a normal bell curve has 10%, 80%, and 10% on the bottom. There's always 10% crazy on both sides, always. Extreme views. I can't hear anything else. Social media has allowed each 10% to reach up and grab another 10% down. And that's just what happens. But that means there's 60% of us in the middle who are listening to this podcast and who are intelligent, thoughtful people. We cannot allow ourselves to get hijacked. So you use these skills because I guarantee you within that 60%, there's something redeeming. And then I want to give everyone one last technique they can use instantly when they're confronted at Thanksgiving dinner with crazy uncle or a boss.
Sorry about the Thanksgiving thing, but I just thought I'd put it on steroids for you.
But I do that. I actually have a 1-minute video on my website that deals with Thanksgiving dinner,
Okay.
how you handle it. I mean, I really do, because this stuff works for all of that. So that's a more advanced technique that we can get into if we have time. But, the whole idea is looking at somebody and seeing what they are as not attacking you, but they're a zoo animal. A skunk, sprays. A snake hisses. A porcupine goes with its spikes. This person is using a defensive strategy. What is it? Why is it? What are they protecting? What's happening? Now, all of a sudden, you go to that whole deeper layer, and it is so rich and so beautiful, and good things can come out of it. And that's what I tell people all the time. I can talk to anybody about anything because I don't think you're crazy.
Right.
I don't think you're stupid. You have an opinion. I'm curious why. Now, you may not be as educated as I am, as smart as I am, as thoughtful as I am, as fill in the blank for whatever you are. Who cares? You share the planet with them. You share the Thanksgiving table with them. You share the conference table at work with them. So you got to deal with them. You may as well find something redeeming. And then that's my last point. That's the one surefire thing that you can use immediately. So if I'm talking to you, Rob, and you're yelling at me, or you're being dismissive, or offensive, or obnoxious, or, and my amygdala is triggered, right? And I can't paradigm shift. And I can't do these techniques because my amygdala is going. First thing you say to yourself, would this person pull my kid out of a burning car? I have to think about that for a minute. Yes, I believe you would. So there's something redeeming about you. Amygdala calms down. Now I look for what's redeeming about you as opposed to what I hate about you. I guarantee you, you will find that. And I will tell you this, I'm a Jewish woman. I made myself do that with Nazis. Okay. And with Hitler, it was brutally hard, but I did. And because I'm able to do it, I can do it with anybody now. I could do anything with anybody. Now, it doesn't mean I like you or I approve of you or I want to vote for you or I want to support you, but I know how to handle you. And that's, to me, just maturity is all that really is. And skill set development, which is why I wrote this book.
Right. Well, honestly, I don't know if you know this, but I don't let publicists send me books because when I really like a book, I want to buy it and write a review on it so it's verified. If somebody sends me a book, it's an unverified review. I'm getting that book of yours. I'm getting it because so many of the things you just said, and one of them that really stuck out is this paradigm shifting, which, and going back to your playbook of handling this with questions and listening. It's funny. It's the oldest move we've learned, and I'm a guy who spent decades on the road. Used to be with tape recorders, now with smartphones. But I record people. Okay, go sell that. Go do that. Nobody's asking questions and listening. It's an unconscious incompetency. But I love the
I like
paradigm
that. Wait a
shifting.
second. I just have to enjoy that choice of word, an unconscious incompetency.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's actually
beautiful.
I'd love to say I came up with it, but it's actually we're in four quadrants. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. That's unconscious incompetency. Sometimes we know that we're not very good at something. That's conscious incompetency. Sometimes we're consciously competent, which means we just read your book. I've got everything here. It's not natural yet, but if you just let me get to the right chapter, I'm going to be dynamite. And then the fourth one we want to get to is unconscious competency, where I can do it and not necessarily obsess on the process or technique.
Oh, I
I
love
own
it.
it. It's a part of me. Okay.
Thank you for teaching me
Now
that.
back to our show.
That was wonderful. Please keep that in. That was great.
Now, but paradigm shifting, the reason why that's so important in my world is, for instance, I work with people in career transition. I work with people who are struggling with bosses, let's say, and they haven't been treated nicely. But they're stuck. They can't get out of it. And actually, without knowing your term, frequently I've said, well, what if you knew that the boss had a special needs child that was having a tough week? What if you knew that? And I just throw that, and they're like, well, if I knew that, well, then why don't we simulate that right now? Would you have more compassion? And by the way, not towards the individual, to yourself. You're the one you're saving yourself. You're carrying this anger around, and the other person isn't going, I feel like there's anger being carried around in Topeka. No idea. They don't know. You're flogging yourself. So I love the concept. I've never used those words of doing that. And even in what you're describing, and I just think it's brilliant. And I wish more people would do it because there's so many benefits to what you've just described.
Well, I guarantee
Yeah.
you, nobody gets through this life unscathed.
Yeah.
Nobody. And the person with the least skill set, the rage right at the edge, the least kindness, the less empathy, has a crappy life.
Yeah.
They can have money, it doesn't matter. But if you really got into it with people and found out their parents and how they were raised and what happened, it doesn't excuse crime that somebody was in foster care, but it helps you understand it and
Yeah.
then maybe help solve it. That's
Yeah.
all it really is.
Yeah. Just take the temperature down a little bit. I'm with you. It's funny. I'll give you another compliment. I've done 350 something podcasts as a host. I've never said this to anyone. And I say this sort of kind of facetiously, but not so much. I would almost be willing to share a stage with you because we come from different angles. So, for instance, what I write and I was pushed to, how do you change the mind of a political person who you don't agree with? I would have loved to have put with you, Dan, but mine was just pretty much a very simple piece. If you want to change the mind of someone else, or for this question that we're dealing with, if you want to have a conversation with someone who has that drastically different opinion, you have to go into it with one rule, and that is you have to be willing to have your mind changed too. And how many of us go in with our arms locked and folded saying, I want to change your mind about this. Oh, good luck with that one.
Right.
So
Good
there's
luck.
another angle as well. But
And there's always the third angle. I love you saying that. There's the third angle, which is I shift a little, you shift a little, or let's take out the word change. Change. No one likes change except the House Majority Speaker, the House Minority Speaker, and a wet baby. Those are only two people that like change. But being able to say, I learned something. That's all you need. I learned something. I thought of it in a different way. I understood a different thing. Oh, well, that does make sense. It's not how I would connect the dots. It's not my values, but it makes sense. You're not a crazy person. And when someone feels that from you, guess what? They're more interested in not thinking you're a crazy person. And maybe there's some value to what you have.
Yeah.
It's really a remarkable thing because we want to live in community. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's for sure. I like the checks and balances of people fighting at each other to where ideas really get wrestled until you can try different things and figure out what actually works. Not, like the whole concept of communism is so interesting. It should work.
Right.
It doesn't. It
Right.
doesn't. The history has proven that, but the concept, each according to his ability, each according to his need. It sounds great.
As they say, and as my, someday, of course, I keep telling this title, it's going to get taken, but I love it. I've always wanted to write a book called "It Looked Good on Paper." Okay.
You should write that book, Rob. Go copyright that thing, or
Yeah.
else get the domain name because that's good.
Maybe I'll talk to my lawyer when this podcast is over. But it's another example of it. Sure looks good on paper, but it doesn't really.
But think about everybody in their own lives. How do you deal with a teenager? I mean, I've got a whole chapter in there about how you do with kids and teenagers,
Right.
and why it's not a manipulative, I'm going to be the parent and control you. I mean, I have a great relationship with my adult children and my grandchildren. And it's because I know when to hold them, when to fold them, when to run, when to stay, when to give in, when not to give in. That's the dance. And in the end, don't we all just freaking want to be happy and
Right.
safe and secure? And then we make decisions that make us crazy. And we wear clothes that are too tight and uncomfortable and shoes that don't fit, but they're stylish, or whatever nonsense like that. In the end, let's just all be happy. And happiness, we know, is getting along with other people and enjoying other people. But I can't because you're terrible. Well, if you pulled my kid out of a burning car, I don't think I would think you were terrible anymore.
Right.
Right? Do I have to go through that experience? Do I have to have my kid killed at a car accident for you to come over with a sympathy casserole for me to think you're okay? Why do I have to go to that extent? Why can't I do it now? So I'm just telling you, people, change your life. Change your life.
Yeah. Well, and we have a general theme here, which is when you're doing the types of things that you're speaking of, you're saving yourself. We're not even asking you to save the person across the street right now. This is for you. This is how you live a happier life. Because, case in point, how's it going so far when you're trying to change that person's mind or bully them into believing something that's their belief, that's their system. But in that belief system, it doesn't say, and I also hate everyone around me. It's not personal. It's just where they are. Let's protect ourselves. That's what a lot of these skills that I'm hearing are. Let's try and find happiness within.
Yeah.
We can't save the world, but we can save us. It's an old quote, right? A little piece of it, but those around us. Because remember also, when we're not happy, we're not the best grandparents, and we're not the best parents, and we're not the best coworker or friend because we're carrying some baggage around. We don't need to be carrying that nonsense around. I love this. I really do. I want to. I could spend a lot of time with you, but I want one more question, and then we'll begin to wrap down. Don't worry, I am going to get at that do-over. So I got 1.5 questions left, but one thing that I noticed, and I want you to tread lightly here, because you got a sales trainer with you, but you've got you refer to emotional arguing and persuading. You have them in the same boat. I want to kind of separate them. Let's start with emotional arguing, and then we're going to get at persuasion. Every time I hear the word persuasion, if I had hair, it would stand up on my head. But I want to I really respect that word, and I think other people may get confused by it. So we'll hold that one for a second, but start with emotional arguing, okay?
So it's very interesting. Most people, when I say most, really the vast majority of people cannot separate what they feel from what they think. And unless you're very good and you've done a lot of training to be able to create that moat and that separation, they contaminate each other. So let me just give an example. Bananas, 25 cents each. How many would you buy? I don't know. I need a couple bananas. Bananas, 4 for $1. 35% boost in sales. That's just stupid. It's mathematically stupid. 35% boost in sales. You want another 10% boost in sales? Limit 2.
Yeah.
No one's going to get my bananas. Now, that's persuasion. Or is it manipulation? You know, it becomes a very interesting game about how that happens. So, at least for me in my career, because ethics are so important to me, I try to stand on the side of giving people information and giving people choice. And sometimes that means I have to help you separate the facts from the emotion. Just because you feel something, don't make it true. It doesn't make it so. You can feel it because of all the reasons why in your life you would have triggers or you would react to it or whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference. You have grace. You allow yourself to have grace. You allow the other person to have grace, to feel that. Now, we have a moat between that and your actions. And because you're mature and you're responsible, I felt those feelings. Now, what do I choose to do with them? That's the fact. That's the argument. That's the action plan. And I find that I don't persuade people. I don't talk them into or out of anything. I help them separate that so that they have more clarity. And a lot of times people don't think 3 steps ahead. Good chess players think 3 steps ahead. Masters think 8 and 10. So if I do this, you'll do this. And if I'll do this, you'll do this. So if I say that, what outcome am I hoping to achieve? Is it going to get me there? So like when I'm mediating, for example, somebody can want to do something real nasty. Or someone calls me for advice in a business thing or something nasty. And I'll say, okay, you can do that. It's like poking them in the eye with a sharp stick. What's the tactical advantage of doing it? What will you achieve? If it's a good enough achievement, do it. We're grown-ups here. This is not kumbaya. This is real life. Fine. The vast majority of the time, you can't identify a decent goal. It just felt good to do it. Okay, well, then what are they going to do? I'm going to poke you in the eye with a sharp stick. How's that going to feel? All right, let's see if we can deflect. Let's see if we can move them in a different direction where no one's getting poked in the eye with a sharp stick. And see, there's no persuasion involved. There's no manipulation. There's no reasoning. It's information and data and clarity. So as a mediator, I am providing clarity. As a mother, I'm providing guidance. As a friend, I'm providing listening and consoling. As a consultant, I'm providing some level of experience and wisdom. What's my role? What am I doing? What outcome do I hope to achieve? And then, like a good coach, I want to help you get to where you are. Because if you're trying to lose weight, it's you on the treadmill, not me. You know, how do we do that? That's my long answer to a very short question.
Okay. So let me give you a short answer to that a short question. It's semantics a little bit, but in fact, what you just described was an ethical form of persuasion. In other words, a running definition that I'll give you for persuasion or sales is taking an idea, putting it in somebody else's brain and making them feel like they thought of it. Okay. Now, we'll get to the manipulation side of this in a second. Hold tight. When you ask about the stick in the eye, how do you think that's going to make you feel? When you get that stick back, how's that going to make you feel? Not so good. What do you think we should do? Maybe we should tone it down a little bit. Okay, good idea. Only that was your idea that you placed in their head. I happen to think that, unfortunately, and I don't want to call out any sales groups, but we are exposed to certain levels of sales at a younger age. And so we go, well, everything is like that. When in fact, you're a lawyer. I'm an entrepreneur. I need good lawyers to help me interpret the law. I have a great deal of respect for lawyers, although there's some pretty bad ones out there too. I respect the good ones. There's some bad salespeople out there, but the good ones help people pass their fear of change, help people see things they can't see. But there's a skill set there. So you're dealing with somebody who has an enormous amount of respect for the ones that do it right. And the ones that do it right do exactly what you just described. 10 more seconds. So let's punch a hole in the manipulation part. If I'm having you do something that I wouldn't personally do, but I need to close the business today, in other words, my intent is for me, not you. Now I'm manipulating you. But we in the sales industry ask very challenging questions. We earn the right to get there through trust, but we do that so that we can help you fix something while it's a small problem before it becomes a big problem. Lawyer, you do it too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can, so there's where we meet. I'm not afraid of the word persuasion. I'm afraid of those who don't know how to handle it properly. And unfortunately, we see a lot of that out there.
I
But
like how you
anyway,
said
yeah,
that, because our world is filled with persuasion and negotiation with your
yeah,
spouse, with your
right.
kid, with yourself. I'm going to wake up early to work out. Nah, I'm going to go back to bed. That's the first negotiation I have every day
Yeah,
because I'm lazy and I don't want to. But I love it. I love it.
okay,
And the main thing is that people listening to this, you're thinking about it. If you're
right.
reading a book, you're reading these other books, you're thinking, you're growing, you're playing, you're evolving. I mean, who wants to be old and learning this stuff that you should have learned in your 30s, in your 60s and 70s? You want to learn it faster and better so that your trajectory is better.
Right.
And just makes, I could say is it makes life better, you
It
know?
sure does. It sure does. And that old saying of, well, I could have told you, but you had to learn it for yourself.
Ugh,
Between you and me, thank you. I've
I
never
hate
been
that.
never been a fan of that one.
I,
If I don't want to listen and I keep saying no, all right, then go learn it yourself. But I wouldn't mind a book or or
well, the
something
other
that
answer
might help
is
me.
teach me a better way. The way
Right.
you're teaching me isn't good. I'm not getting it. So
Right.
show a better way to help me learn how to do that. Don't tell me to walk 10 miles barefoot in the snow to the one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah. That's not selling anybody. But I'll tell you what I am sold on. Holding the calm, the secret to resolving conflict and diffusing tension. Uh, I'm getting a copy. You'll see I got to read it before I can write a review on it, but you're going to see a review of mine on there. I hope that my podcast nation, uh, I hope we all go out and get that book again, audio, iPad, whatever you want, written. We got them all there. 10 30 more seconds. I just promised myself, because you made me promise, do-over. I didn't want to
I'll do
forget it.
do-over. And let
So
me
give
just
me a
add for
quick
people,
do-over.
my webpage is holdingthecalm.com. I got tons of free resources on there for you. And I'm on LinkedIn. So connect with me. I post every single day. And
Good.
I'm just trying to get stuff out to kind of help people.
Got it.
So a do-over, it is one of the greatest magic wand tools you can ever have, because I'm human. I'm an expert and I'm human. And I sometimes say stupid things and the words are out of my mouth. I'm like, how do I get you back in there? So when you say something stupid or thoughtless or inconsiderate, or you were hungry or tired or cranky or whatever, you see it on the person's face immediately. Oh, Rob, that didn't come out the way I wanted to. Can I have a do-over? Who says no to that?
Right.
Nobody. Now, Rob feels heard, feels seen, feels respected, feels empowered, because he had to agree to let me do it. Now I do it better. We actually just got deeper and richer and more important with each other. But I'm telling you, the magic of a do-over, and you do that with your kids, teach your kids that, changes their lives, everybody. I'm telling you. And people aren't going to say, oh my God, you're so good at holding the calm. They're just going to say, wow, you just get along with everyone, don't you? Or you just seem to make things happen. Or everyone likes you. You just seem to move through life easier.
Yeah.
That's the kind of junk people will tell you.
Yeah. You know what I hear in that phrase? You're an authentic human being. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you. You saved me a little time. I was going to ask, how do people get a hold of you, but you hit it. I'm going to throw in a few more. Holdingthecalm.com, I see, is a book website. Info at holdingthecalm.com, and an email. So and go on and reach out on LinkedIn. Is it just the way it sounds, Hesha Abrams?
Correct. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a Facebook page that we have too.
Yep.
And so, the guy is just to send this out to people. And what I put in the back of the book is a discussion guide, because training budgets are real tight right now. And
Yep.
so if you just get, some group together and you all get the book and then you sit and read it together, the discussion guide corresponds with the book, then you can apply for continuing education credit in whatever organization you're in or certification that you have. And what's brilliant about it is that you'll read something and say, well, I thought that was stupid. It didn't make any sense to me. And someone else will say, well, I was very moved by it. And now you get to practice going, really? Why? And then they tell you, and then you learn something about them, and you get like ancillary free team building in with the whole concept of it, and it's free and it's easy. And I shoved it in the books. Everyone could have it.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate you stopping by here and talking to us. I learned a lot. I can't wait to get the book myself, and I'm just grateful to have had the time with you that we had. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll do it again as well as we can next time. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.